If you're considering starting your own farm but aren't sure where to begin, we have a game plan for you. First, avoid planting too many crops at once.
Simple put, don't bite off more than you can chew.
You don't want to plant your crop and then struggle to care for and preserve it. Therefore, get in touch with your local extension officer, since they can give you the technical guidance you need to have a successful crop life. While your extension officer is on hand to help you through the process, you, the farmer, will have to bear some of the responsibility in the cultivation and the production of your crop, like having the proper land tenure, whether through leasing or ownership. Appropriate property access is key, and store your products properly, ensuring tools, pesticides, and fertilizers are kept in different areas. Also, there are several pertinent questions to ask yourself. Do you have the right equipment and tools for the purpose of cultivation? What about cash flow to take care of the crop from planting to harvesting? Okay, that's covered. Do you have access to labor, proper restroom, and first aid facilities for your workers?
For the new farmers who have not started planters yet, we are encouraging you to get registered at our RADA offices and get on board, because we need your input.
Mr. Witter, Mr. Brown, Dr. Brown-Burke, Dr. Charles, Mr. Chin, Mr. Clark, Mr. Cousins, Miss Crawford, Miss Daly, Miss Davis, Mr. Golding, Mr. Graham, Dr. Guy, Miss Hamilton, Miss Hannah, Mr. Henriquez, Mr. Henry, Mr. Hilton, Mr. Jackson, Mr. Lawrence, Miss Lee, Mr. Miller, Mr. Montague, Miss Morrison, Mrs. Nita Garvey, Mr. Paulwell, Mr. Phillips, Dr. Phillips, Mr. James, Mr. Robertson, Mr. Robinson, Mr. Siblist, Mr. Slowly, Mrs. Vaz, Dr. Wheatley, Mr. Williams, Mr. Wilson, Mr. Wright. All on board?
As usual, I welcome all the members to another sitting of the House and to the continuation of the State of Constituency debate. I want to also welcome those who are joining online via different social media platforms. And I always say those in the gallery, but I see one person, two, those in the gallery who are here with us this afternoon. I want to welcome you all to another sitting of the House of Representatives. Statements by ministers. PM. Are you going to?
Madam Speaker, I ask for the suspension of the standing orders for us to go directly to public business, where the State of Constituency debate will continue. Madam Speaker.
Members, the question before the House is that there is the suspension of the items on the agenda, and we move straight into the item noted at public business, and we continue with the State of the Constituency debate. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today, speakers are the Honorable Robert Nesta Morgan, MP, Clarendon, North Central, Dr. Maurice Guy, Member of Parliament, St. Mary's Central, Mr. George Wright, Member of Parliament, Westmoreland Central, and then it will be closed, the debate will be closed by Mr. Morland Wilson, MP, Westmoreland Western. Madam Speaker, I now ask you to invite the Honorable Robert Nesta Morgan to make his presentation.
Minister, the Honorable Robert Nesta Morgan, MP, Clarendon North Central.
Madam Speaker, I seek your permission to speak from a seat that is not.
You have permission, Minister.
Can you hear me? Madam Speaker, on the 3rd of September 2020, the people of Jamaica once again returned the Jamaica Labour Party-led government, a government led by the Most Honourable Prime Minister Andrew Holness, as the majority in this House. It is on this platform that I stand here as a country MP, fully cognizant of the tremendous hopes and expectations that people have placed in this government nationally and also in my constituency of North Central Clarendon. Babsy. All right, I'll continue. I was born on the hill at Cocoa Peace in a one-bedroom house. My father mopped the floor at the Chapelton local pharmacy, and my mother worked in the free zone in Spanish Town. It is through perseverance and the guidance of my superiors that I have excelled. Many of you know my journey through politics. I've had to be strong, fearless, and strategic, sitting at the feet of my elders in the JLP to learn and grow. I want to thank my colleagues for their support, and I want to give a special thank you to the Prime Minister for his patience. Thanks to Dr. Chang for his mentorship, and thanks to those on the opposition side who from time to time call with advice and support. Those sitting here know that country MPs are a special breed. Our constituencies are vast and diverse. Farming, manufacturing, food processing, transportation, entertainment are big industries in our constituencies. By any measure, we have more roads than other constituencies. We have more water issues than other constituencies, more light issues, more issues with the internet, more issues with transportation. I was speaking to my colleague earlier, Minister Chuck, and we were calculating the difference in cost for a child going to school in a rural constituency versus a child in Kingston. A child who lives in Beckford Crawl who passed for Foga Primary or Foga High School has to pay $120 from Beckford Crawl to Maypen, and then $120 from Maypen to Foga. That's $420 a day. That's over $2,000 a week, and that doesn't include lunch. A child who lives in Granspin and is going to go to whether Kingston Technical or one of those schools How much is it? $20? $40. It's $40 round trip. I sat here for most of the presentations, and I'm proud to be on the side with MPs who have dedicated their lives to the improvement of their countrymen. I am more proud of the country MPs, though, as they travel hundreds of miles every month to spread the good words and deeds of a government that cares. A government led by the most consequential leader in modern Jamaica, Andrew Michael Holness. Madam Speaker, we are confident and sure that despite the challenges many of us first-term MPs and country MPs have inherited, we now have a leader with vision, wisdom and understanding to navigate our complex world, with intuitiveness to craft policies, plans and programs that are substantive and substantial. We are developing Jamaica. We are transforming Jamaica, and we are building a better country and a society. Madam Speaker, while the COVID pandemic has set us back by a few years, the Minister of Finance will tell you in no uncertain terms that this government, Madam Speaker, has presided over the most positive recovery in the Western Hemisphere. Our Finance Minister was right when he said, no other country in the hemisphere can say these three things simultaneously. Economic output is above pre-COVID levels. Unemployment is below pre-COVID levels. And the national debt is below pre-COVID levels. Madam Speaker, I would like to particularly thank Mr. Norris Stone. As the story goes, it was Norris who searched for me at OPM, and when he found me, asked me, you know, I want the seat. I am proud that a man who I met as a student walking up the hill at Clarendon College some 20 years ago now sees the same student standing here representing his community as a son of the soil. My constituency secretary, Ms. Angelina Stanberry, who I have known for almost all my life, my executive, my councillors, and other members of the North Central team have weathered the storm with me and have committed themselves to improving the lives of the people of North Central Clarendon. To my support team at the Office of the Prime Minister, the staff assigned to me who constantly work towards our common and positive goals, Spear Sewell for her reservoir of wisdom. Madam Speaker, from the hills of Moko through the plains of Chapelton all the way to Rock River, North Central is in the center of the island and central to the Jamaica Labour Party. I thank all who came out on election day and gave the JLP through my candidacy a more than 1,500 vote majority. And I say to our General Secretary, Dr. Horace Chang, that North Central, a better place, is safe and sound in the loving arms of the Jamaica Labour Party. Madam Speaker, I wish a particular leader was here, but he's not. Because the message that my constituents wish to send is that no chaka-chaka opposition can ever take root in my constituency. Madam Speaker, I was reading the papers the other day and I see where a particular GenSec said they have filled out all their council candidatures. And even though well, you play before the ball bowl. Desmond don't call no election. But if as you say, you have filled out so many of your council candidates, how come North Central Clarendon doesn't have one councillor candidate from the PNP or even an MP candidate? None. None. You have no representative in North Central Clarendon. Not one. Madam Speaker, I wish to to thank, though, all the persons who have caused me to be here, to be able to give this report on North Central Clarendon. Madam Speaker, in the first year we had to contend with the pandemic. Our students were disconnected to a great extent from the formal education system. Many did not have internet or the required devices for online learning. First, I want to thank my generous donors, but particularly the Ministry of Education and Youth under Minister Williams and the Ministry of Finance, as we were able to deliver hundreds of tablets to students. Since then, we have not stopped building a better education system in North Central Clarendon. Madam Speaker, education is critical to the upward mobility of youth and children. I can say so because I have the experience, particularly in country areas such as North Central Clarendon, which is why it remains a top priority for me. I'm a proud product of North Central Clarendon. It was through gaining an education and hard work from very humble circumstances that I am here to stand here in this honorable house and speak to you today. Since my last presentation, we have maintained our thrust to equip the children of North Central Clarendon with resources needed in an equal and equitable way to strengthen their chance of having a positive outcome, especially in contrast to urban Jamaica, where resources are more readily available to schools. Madam Speaker, the demands are many and were exacerbated by COVID-19, but we did not falter. We forged along despite the challenges and were able to provide Lennon High School with an intuitive whiteboard through collaboration with Huawei Technologies. Lennon High School became one of the first recipients of the Idea Hub, a game changer in the virtual learning environment. We ensured that long-standing plans for the development of a computer lab at Brixton Hill Primary were fast-tracked and completed with a community access point with the assistance of the Universal Service Fund. And I want to thank Minister Vaz for his work on that. Through the SURF program, 99 students received vouchers valued at $30,000 each to aid them in purchasing tablets, ensuring that they were able to access online and remote learning. Madam Speaker, through our strong advocacy, Clarendon College got a new coaster bus from the Ministry of Education and Youth. This was necessary, and I didn't know if I should put this in a speech, but I think it's important. Why did this bus become necessary? It became necessary as there was a massive accident along the Chapelton Road where the driver, Mr. Dunkley, died. So we had a bus that we had for many years, and we lost the bus and lost our driver. Mr. Dunkley used to take me to school. We used to run a taxi back in the day and took me to school. So as a kind of memory of him and memory of the important role Clarendon College played in my life, I thought it was appropriate for me to push as hard as possible. And I want to thank the Ministry of Education, former PS Grace McLean, and especially Minister Williams for giving Clarendon College that bus. Madam Speaker, we also advanced in the process of relocating the Chapelton Primary School. This is one of the commitments I made before I became Member of Parliament. We have already identified land. The new Chapelton Primary School, which now sits on less than a half acre of land, will be sitting on at least 5 acres of land. It will have a football field. Chapelton Primary doesn't have a football field, it will get one. It doesn't have netball courts, it will get one. The community center will be right beside the school where they can have use of the auditorium. That is something that I'm thankful to Minister Williams for putting it in our medium-term plans for the development of schools in Jamaica. Madam Speaker, for the 2022-23 school year, through the CDF, we assisted over 800 families in their preparation for the school year. This was done through the provision of school grants of about 288, uniform assistance of about 100, and 428 back-to-school book vouchers valuing no less than $6,000. Madam Speaker, we were able to serve these students with resources that we had. But every mickle make a muckle, and with our little mickle from the CDF and from Dr. Nigel Clark, we ensured that we provided our students with a lot of help for them to secure a brighter future. Madam Speaker, for learning to take place more effectively, more is needed than books and uniforms. The environment, Madam Speaker, that is the state of the school, is critical to ensuring that our students can absorb the lessons being taught. That is why we ensured that renovations and repairs to the Pinders Valley Primary, which had started, were completed for the new school year. Pinders Valley was closed for over a year. Remember I told you about the cost of school. Pinders Valley is in Coxon. You have to take a taxi from Pinders Valley, and then it's going to take you to Chapelton, and then you leave Chapelton and go somewhere else. That is 3 fear. The people lost their school in the pandemic because when school closed, termites take over. So the Ministry of Education had to lick down the building, knock down the building, build a new building. It took a while, but we're very happy that in September, the school was able to reopen, and the people of Coxon in Rock River got back their school. We completed repairs to John Aston Primary. We completed repairs to Rock River Primary. And we also completed repairs to Mount Providence Primary. We debushed Beulah All Age, which was overgrown by vegetation. Beulah All Age is on a very massive property. It had not been bushed in over a decade. We had trees growing there that you could use to make beds. We had lumber on the school compound. So we had to work with the Ministry of Education, get heavy equipment to clean the school, because we know the risk to the students. We know the risk to their health. We know the risk to their safety. So we're very happy that the Ministry of Education was able to help us to debush Beulah All Age. In the area of agriculture, which is a core part of the livelihood of my constituents, we're very happy to report, Madam Speaker, that not only have our efforts been focused on providing our farmers with those types of support, but we have also taken on the challenge to get our youth involved and to groom their interest in agriculture in all its forms. We need our young people to see agriculture as a viable option and a career path, and to understand the importance of the sector for the sustainable future of our country, and to remove food security as a risk to our society. Madam Speaker, this is no small task as we continue steadfast in our approach. One hand can't clap, and so I have to thank invaluable partners whose only wish is that Jamaica and Jamaicans can succeed. The rearing of chickens is sometimes criticized by some, but in my constituency, Madam Speaker, 100 chickens can send a child to school for a term. There can be no debate that Jamaicans love chicken. Just look at the lines on a Sunday evening at our popular fast food places. You know which one I'm talking. I'm not going to promote any particular one, but just look at the lines. Look at the lines at the Jerkman and Red Hills Road, and you will see the importance of chicken. And that's why I want to thank the Jamaica Bauxite Institute, who recently provided us with 2,250 broilers, 180 bags of feed, and 45 packets of boosters, which were delivered to 28 constituents in the Moko division. In May, Madam Speaker, with the assistance of CDF through RADA, we were able to assist 90 persons with 106 bags of fertilizer. In June, 1,300 broiler chickens and 140 bags of feed were given to 26 constituents. Again, Madam Speaker, in October, we provided 7,100 pounds of fertilizer to over 100 persons. To some, Madam Speaker, this may seem small, but as the saying goes, one cocoa, full basket. And as Member of Parliament, I am striving to ensure that all my constituents have a basket and some cocoa in it. Yeah. You want a basket too? Just over a year ago, Madam Speaker, and this is a very heartwarming story for me. Sister T, who is a pillar of the Rock River community, gave my office a pair of rabbits. The donation birthed the community rabbit rearing experiment, CRE. Madam Speaker, from that pier, we were able, in November 2021, hand over 18 rabbits to youth in North Central Clarendon. These youngsters, Madam Speaker, also received training in rabbit rearing and care from RADA. Last month, we gave away another 12, and next month, we'll be giving away another 12. We are building a rabbit industry in North Central, and this is not government money. This is community people helping community people. Madam Speaker, the North Central Clarendon is the largest producer of ackee in Jamaica. Chances are, if you have had ackee in the last week, you've gotten it from North Central Clarendon. I want to recognize Corey, who never went to university but has built up a large business employing over 15 young people and selling tons of ackee to Tijul and Sadler and other processors. We're happy that the processing factory in Morgan's Pass will soon open, and thank the Jamaica Agricultural Society and the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation for the work. Let me tell you a little bit about Corey. So in ackee season, which is twice a year, you see these hatchback cars driving around the constituency with a bamboo stick stretching out the back of it. And they go to houses and they'll buy a bag of ackee from this household, buy another bag of ackee, and they stockpile it. And then the truck comes and picks up the ackee, and it has created significant income for many persons in North Central Clarendon, and it's an industry that we need to protect. Madam Speaker, water is life, and every Jamaican knows that it is the phrase that we see on our bills every month. Well, at least for those of us who have been able to receive it, we know that there is a disparity across the island that has been there for many decades, where rural communities lack infrastructure for water to be piped to their homes, schools, markets, and farms. But, Madam Speaker, as country MP with first-hand experience in growing up in the constituency, I am working to ensure that this will be soon a far-away memory. In December last year, I embarked on a constituency-wide tour with the National Water Commission to determine the best possible water solutions for North Central Clarendon. In partnership with the NWC, the aim is to ensure long-term and sustainable plans to allow our constituents to have access to piped water. Of course, Madam Speaker, I do not need to explain the economic and health benefits of this to our rural constituents. In 2018, Prime Minister Holness committed to the people of Rock River that they would get water. Since then, miles of pipes have been laid. A 50,000-gallon tank has been installed. But the challenge, however, Madam Speaker, was that they couldn't find any water in the aquifers to sustain the wells. They dug 4 wells, and there was no water. I'm happy to report that the NWC has decided that because we don't have groundwater, but we have surface water. So they will be creating a small dam in Rock River to provide the solution for the people of Rock River. It is very interesting. When Bustamante was alive, Rock River had pipe water. We used to get water from gold mine in St. Catherine. So imagine you waking up every morning and seeing a big 2-inch pipe in front of your yard. But you will never get water from it. Because as the population has increased, we have not invested sufficiently in water infrastructure, especially in rural communities. I'm very happy that this government has taken the decision to invest in rural communities. Madam Speaker, so Rock River will be getting their water. Moko, which 80% of Moko has no pipe. So yes, let me finish. 80%. Moko has provided billions of dollars to this country through its red dirt. But majority of Moko has no pipe. The first major water project to be done in Moko for almost 40 years was done in 2020 under the Andrew Holness administration, where Lennon and Moko was finally able to get water. And I'm happy to report that the NWC has done the studies and have drafted a water plan to finally bring water to the people of Moko. And that is something I'm very happy about. Madam Speaker, I also want to announce that the Summerfield well approval has been given for the rehabilitation of the Summerfield well. And I live sometimes in Kingston. And it's an important point I made to the NWC. There was a broken main in the community where I was living in Kingston. And they came and dug it up and fixed it within 2 weeks. There are areas in our constituency that were dug up for 8 months. And I'm happy to report to my constituents that the inequity between the speed at which we fix the digging up of places in Kingston and country is something that I have had conversations with the NWC with, and they have committed to stopping it. So I can report that the holes that were dug on the new road from Cocoa Peace to Mount Providence, on the Chapelton Main Road and several other areas in my constituency to repair pipes will be fixed within the next 3 weeks. Madam Speaker, in the area of welfare, Jamaica's economy has been impacted as we're a part of a global system. Unfortunately, the economic effects disproportionately affect those most vulnerable in our society. We have tried in earnest as a government and as MPs to provide our constituents with as much support and resources as we can, and we continue to seek partnerships with public and private entities to ensure the welfare and well-being of our communities. My constituents, Madam Speaker, are not looking for handouts. They are looking for a help up in regaining their economic independence and the ability to provide basic needs for their families, honestly and legally. As such, Madam Speaker, we have committed to assisting as much as we can those who are most in need in an equitable manner. In December 2021, we want to thank the Ministry of Labour and Social Security for their short-term poverty intervention program, where almost $1 million was spent for business startups and business boosts in my constituency. Over 40 constituents received recommendations for the Ministry of Labour and Social Security's Popular Farmer program. We spent over $1 million in funeral grants assisting persons who were not necessarily able to afford the full cost of burying their loved ones. We spent almost $500,000 on medical grants. And throughout December 2021, we employed over 1,500 through the NWA constituents in the seasonal mitigation program. The Constituency Development Fund's Housing Rehabilitation Program made it possible to assist 43 constituents through the period of February to March 2022 at a value of $1.6 million. Madam Speaker, I want to close by speaking about infrastructure in my constituency. Only last year, Madam Speaker, through the hard work and constant advocacy of the Minister of Education and myself, 7 schools in my constituency got internet for the first time. Much thanks must be given also to the Universal Service Fund, which continues to partner with us. In my first year, we got free Wi-Fi in Chapelton. And through this partnership, we now have free Wi-Fi in Stewarton, with plans to add Moko Square, Rock River Square, and Beckford Crawl to the free Wi-Fi list. Technology is an essential component of rural development and Jamaica's development in general, as we see more essential services closing down their brick-and-mortar stores and moving their services online. The goal is to ensure that the people of North Central Clarendon are not left behind, as technological and infrastructural advances occur in our metropoles. The same should occur in rural communities. And I want to give credit to, and I won't call their name, there's one particular telecommunications company which has gone on through my advocacy to install fiber optic cables throughout a significant portion of Chapelton and Mucko where they were not telephony and cable services previously. So I want to thank them for that. Madam Speaker, the road rehabilitation forms a significant part of our infrastructure work in North Central Clarendon, as it is a critical pillar for rural development. There are roads within the constituency that have for decades never been repaired. Since 2020, we have made it our duty to ensure the repair and rehabilitation of several roads, as reported in my last presentation. In addition to those, we have commenced and completed a series of roadworks in Prospect, where we collaborated with the councillor, Crawl, Blackwood, Springfield, Shinglesut, Limehall, Ennishill, and Trafalgar Hill. Major work was also done in Bellasgate, which borders myself, Minister Warmington, Minister Charles Jr., and Dr. Christopher Tufton's constituencies. The Christmas work program also saw the completion of repairs to Mucko Road, Salem Hill, Beckford Crawl to Blackwoods, Ennishill, Trafalgar Hill, and sections of Chapelton Bypass. Madam Speaker, in Christmas 2021, we upped the ante and over 2,000 persons were engaged in seasonal work. While I'm thankful for the allocation for the last period, like my colleagues behind, beside, and in front of me, we are even more thankful for the allocation this period. Madam Speaker, I want to give special thanks to Minister Everett Warmington, Minister with responsibility for works, for the work that he continues to do with first-term MPs like myself, in not necessarily always giving us the road, but at least being present to tell people that the government cares about your road and is interested in repairing your road. There was concern in my constituency about several roads, and the constituents kept asking, Minister Morgan, when are these roads going to fix? I want to thank Minister Warmington for his speed in coming to North Central to reassure the people that though the plans may not always be immediate, there are plans. Madam Speaker, I'll be finishing in 4 minutes, 5 minutes.
Madam Speaker, I ask that the standing orders be suspended to enable the Minister to complete his presentation. He's asking for 5 minutes.
Right. The question before the House is that the standing orders be suspended to allow the Minister to have 5 minutes to complete his presentation. Those
Thank
in
you
favor?
very much. I don't need more than 5. Thank you very much, House Leader, Deputy House Leader. I think the most important announcement I want to make today to my constituents is that the people of North Central Clarendon will be having a very Merry Christmas. As the hospital across Jamaica, yes, as the hospital that has been closed for many years, the Chapelton Community Hospital will be open on the 8th of December by the Prime Minister and the Minister of Health. I want to thank, and this is why country people are good people, you know. Miss Beverly Nichols grew up in Blackwoods. She went overseas and she made something of herself. But she did not turn her back on her community. She donated over $100 million for the rehabilitation of the Chapelton Community Hospital. And I want to thank the Prime Minister, the Chase Fund, Dr. Tufton, and the entire Ministry of Health and Wellness team for helping to match that $100 million. So now we know that the people of North Central will finally get their hospital. Now imagine, Minister, you're sick, and it takes half an hour from Chapelton to Maypen. And instead of having to travel that half an hour, time is life, you know. You now have a hospital that you can go to. I'm also pleased to announce, and Sibylis, you will get... Yes, right. I'm also pleased to announce our eco plans by the Ministry of Health and Wellness and by their minister that the upgrading of the Moko Health Center will also take place. So North Central Clarendon is going to have a lot of developments over the next couple of years. Madam Speaker, though we toil on steep hills and trod long roads, we are energized by the love and loyalty of the people of North Central Clarendon. When we campaigned, the people said they wanted water, and through this government, we're giving them water. When we campaigned, they said they wanted roads, and through this government, we're giving them roads. The people said they wanted better schools, and through this government, we're giving them better schools. Madam Speaker, the people wanted access to technology, and we're giving them access to technology. Madam Speaker, I am not a visitor to North Central Clarendon. I am a son of the soil. I am a country MP, and it is with pride that I stand here representing the good people of North Central Clarendon. We are making, under this administration led by Andrew Holness, North Central Clarendon a better place. Thank you and God bless you.
Madam Speaker, excellent presentation by a young member of Parliament. So, Madam Speaker, after hearing an excellent presentation by a young member of Parliament, we now go to a veteran member of Parliament, and I ask you to invite Dr. Maurice Guy, Member of Parliament for St. Mary's Central, to make his presentation.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Thank you, members. Madam Speaker, I rise yet again to make my contribution to the state of the constituency debates. Last year when I spoke in the debates, Madam Speaker, I proffered a view that these debates will not yield any tangible result for the constituency. And all that we are doing here is to report on what has been done, and yes, to say on what we'd like to have done. But experience has shown that in terms of pleas by presentations in these debates, not much come of it. But Madam Speaker, it is almost like flogging a dead horse. But on the other hand, we live in faith that the expectation that the substance of things hoped for will eventually come. Madam Speaker, I would like first of all to thank the Almighty for giving me strength and keeping me safe so I can make this contribution. I want to thank him for his many blessings over the years in protecting myself, my family, my constituents, and my colleagues through good times and bad times. Last month, Madam Speaker, marked 20 years since I have been Member of Parliament for the great constituency of Central St. Mary, which provided home for my colleague in the West some time ago. This, Madam Speaker, is my 5th term as MP, having been elected on October 16, 2002. I want to thank the people of Central St. Mary for their continued confidence in me, and I will commit to do whatever I can in the best interest of the peoples of St. Mary. I want to celebrate and honor the contribution and dedication of my constituency executive members. my councillors, 2 in the executive and 2 outside the executive, my constituency staff office, my CDF officer, my driver, recorder, trooper Henry, and my security officer. Without the team, Madam Speaker, life would be arduous and the work could not be effectively done, as every member has a role to play in this complex organization. I also want to publicly express my appreciation to my former constituency office secretary, Ms. Chelsea Chin, for the many years of dedicated service, and wish her well in her new endeavors as she migrates. To my friends and those who support some of the work in my constituency out of their pockets, I cannot express enough thanks, Madam Speaker. True friends, I want to thank my family for their forbearance and for allowing me time off to do the business of the country. My wife Nadine, my children Maurice and Kimberly, and yes, member, my grandchildren Alexander and Zachary. I'm eternally grateful for your understanding and selflessness. I also want to thank the leader of the opposition and party president Mark Golin for having reposed his confidence in me in my other parliamentary responsibilities. And Madam Speaker, I'd like for the members on the other side to listen to this and to stop the talking just now. To you, Madam Speaker, and my parliamentary colleagues on both sides, maximum respect and love. As you know very well, Madam Speaker, the work of a member of parliament is varied. My colleague spoke to it yesterday. It is taxing, unrewarding at times, unrecognized at times, but yet, Madam Speaker, this type of service gives some mode of satisfaction, recognizing that you are able to change and impact the lives of many others, as well as impact the direction of the country. There are many expectations of the role of a member of parliament. You are required to be all things for all men and women, the parent, the relative, the employer, the employee, the breadwinner, the undertaker, the pharmacist, the individual to vent on when state agencies fall up. And sometimes, Madam Speaker, this venting is laced with expletives. And yes, one is expected to remain calm and civil in all instances. There's a view, Madam Speaker, that a member of parliament has government funds in his pocket walking around and is able to dole out at the request of their charges. Unfortunately, Madam Speaker, the view arose of what our predecessors inadvertently might have led them to believe. When they are told that funding, even CDF, is in the custody of the implementing agencies and that invoices or other means of verification is needed, one is greeted with a blank face, almost in disbelief. Immediate assistance, when it is necessary, usually comes from the MP's personal funds and not the state funds. Therefore, Madam Speaker, a part of what needs to be done from all sides as members of parliament is a relook, as well as a renewed communication as to the role of the member of parliament. Whereas by constitution we are legislators, we have become almost a government in our respective constituencies, being de facto head of all agencies and government entities without any power over these same agencies. It is therefore my recommendation, Madam Speaker, that the Parliament engages the country as well on the role of the Member of Parliament. St. Mary is a prime agricultural parish, endowed with good soil, more than average rainfall, and a good climate for growing a wide variety of crops. The constituency also has a thriving fishing industry that is centered primarily around the Pachi Beach in Port Maria and Robbins Bay Fishing Village. The constituency. But I'll extend it to Rainier shortly. Although the fishermen get subsidized fuel, that is all they get from the Fisheries Authority. They are in great need of help in terms of boat and engine assistance, and I'm appealing to the Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries to assist those folks. Our farmers need assistance too. When I listen to my colleagues speaking about the assistance in their constituency received from the Ministry of Agriculture, I'm forced to echo the sentiments of all members of this side that assistance to constituencies need to be equitable. You know, Madam Speaker, I'm indeed grateful on behalf of my farmers for the 70 bags of fertilizer received, but was shocked to hear big thanks in the Parliament last week for the 310 bags of fertilizer received from the same ministry by another constituency. Madam Speaker, I was, however, jolted into reality when I was reminded of the Jamaican phrase which says, donkey say the world a level. I'm therefore compelled to add my voice to the chorus of members from this side calling for equity. Many small farmers are seeking land to start or expand their production in the parish. I'm happy to see that the Agro-Invest Corporation has restarted the development and subdivision of land into large acreages in non-such and unity estate for leasing it to farmers. If this is done expeditiously, it can result in significantly increased fruit production for the parish and by extension for the nation. Madam Speaker, I'm glad the Minister walked in recently, or just now. The constituency has so far benefited from USF projects. Yes, Minister Vaz. With 3 community Wi-Fi hotspots in Islington, Woodside, and Albion Mountain, and a 4th one in the implementing stage for Hampstead. This has not only increased connectivity for the general citizenry, but has aided students in their study and research. The Township Wi-Fi project was commissioned in Port Maria in May this year, courtesy of the Minister. Thank you, Minister, and the staff of the USF, headed by the CEO, for the work so far. And seek your understanding as we ask for more community access points. Madam Speaker, last week a colleague of us, spoke about the roads in their constituency. She started off by saying, the roads, the roads. Madam Speaker, when I listened to that comment, I was a little taken aback, wondering if I was dreaming, as she was describing exactly what the state of affairs of my roads in my constituency, Central St. Mary. All major roads in the constituency, Madam Speaker, bar none, are in need of serious rehabilitation. And even those that I share with my colleague in Western St. Mary and in Southeast St. Mary. We have heard of major road demonstrations and roadblocks across the entire country. 2 weeks ago, we had our fair share in Central St. Mary, where the taximen and some citizens decided to block the roads in protest over the bad road conditions. Madam Speaker, I know of these conditions. Like the Speaker before me, I travel on them daily as I navigate to and from my house in St. Mary, my home in St. Mary. But I want to make a point, Madam Speaker. Whereas I empathize with the motorists, I could not, cannot, and will not support roadblocks where citizens are deprived of their freedom of movement, where emergencies are impeded, emergency services are impeded, and there's always the potential for explosive situations which may result in harm to life and property. Further, Madam Speaker, I could not be supportive of breaking the law when I'm a legislator sitting in this house that makes the law. I will support protests which do not block roads in support of my fellow constituents, but not a roadblock. It is not for want of trying, Madam Speaker, because representation to the Minister with responsibility for roads has been ongoing. And truth be told, this has been going back as far back as 2016 with the Minister. Apart from a generalized patching program which takes place currently just now about once or twice a year, there isn't any more, except that we get at Christmas. And the roads have been allowed by the National Works Agency to deteriorate to their present undrivable state. The Minister has finally committed to tour the constituency on November 9, 2022, and I'm expecting that he will make good on his promise and have a first-hand look at the state of the road infrastructure in Central St. Mary. You know, Madam Speaker, unlike other speakers who come to this House and reel out the numbers of roads that have been repaired, I am forced to state those that need major repairs. Highgate to Palmetto, Palmetto to Post Road, Port Maria to Islington, Islington to Water Valley, Ballards Valley to Hampstead, Hampstead to Sunside, Trinity to Freehill, into Fontabella. All right. These alongside those which I have called bastard roads last year, Madam Speaker. Those are the roads that have no mothers, no fathers. The only person who is responsible is a member of parliament. These are the roads that are not owned by the National Works Agency, not owned by the municipal corporations. These are the roads that are relic from the land settlement roads that people were given land in the late 50s and 60s. I'm speaking of Haywood Hall and Trimblesworth, both former land settlement roads. They have no owner. No mother, no father except the MP. And all need road works. I am happy to note that the rehabilitation of NHT scheme roads have been completed in the Frontier Housing Scheme in Port Maria, and work is currently being undertaken at the Stockholm Park Housing Scheme in Highgate. And I'm also satisfied, Madam Speaker, that this program of work includes drainage and proper drainage in the system, and it is being attended to. Madam Speaker, all my colleagues, bar none, speaking in these debates have spoken about the wanton destruction of roadways by the National Water Commission without reinstatement. My constituency falls within that lot too, Madam Speaker. And when roads are dug up, there's no urgency or seemingly no plan to reinstate them. Some roads have outstanding digs for 2 to 3 years. I've written to both agencies almost a year ago about this, but nothing more than an acknowledgement of the letter was what I received, Madam Speaker. I want to know what is the status of that MOU with the National Water Commission and the National Works Agency with regards to rehabilitation of cuts in the road. It is high time that MOU is brought into being, acted upon or rescinded, Madam Speaker, so don't give members of Parliament the view that they are going to fix the road. It is also an opportune time, Madam Speaker, for the Minister of Economic Growth and Job Creation, under whose ministry both agencies fall, to finally resolve this issue. It cannot be fair that out of the small patching allocation given to my constituency, and I can only speak to mine, that some is being spent to correct the defects of the road as a result of the National Water Commission digs. This only reduces the potential extent of the patching program and creates continued challenges for the motoring public. It is one agency subsidizing another and cannot be allowed to continue, Madam Speaker. The Eastern St. Mary Water Supply System, which provides water for the major areas in my constituency, such as Highgate and its environs, Islington, and its many villages, have been touted and earmarked for development since around 2007, when then Minister of Water and Housing, Dr. Horace Chang, mentioned the plan. This plan was to augment the supply which currently comes from the Crish's Spring at Iter Boreal. Nothing was done until 2013, 2014, when the wells were dug in the Wagwater Basin in the region of Agualto Vale in an area known as Jordan's Run. And these wells can supply up to 3 million gallons of water per day. And the plan, Madam Speaker, is to pump this water into the areas of Highgate and Islington. The water in these communities right now, Madam Speaker, is currently regulated. So unlike the corporate area which gets water every day in their lines, no area gets water more than once or twice per week, as the source and transmission lines are inadequate to carry the volumes of water needed, and increasingly constituents have had to be getting more and more storage capacity. This is so, Madam Speaker, because whenever there is a breakdown in the pump or a failure due to JPS lack of power, which is regular, the areas which have been served on those days when the failure occurs will not get any water until their regular day comes around, often 1 or 2 weeks later. To add insult to injury, the NWC is not able to, at all times, to truck water to the affected areas. This, Madam Speaker, is untenable and unacceptable. I'm hereby calling on the NWC to speedily implement this system so that the long-suffering citizens of Central St. Mary and sections of Southeast St. Mary too can get water on a more consistent basis. 14 years is too long, Madam Speaker. There also needs to be a major overhaul of the treatment and distribution pipelines coming from the Palmetto Grove system. I will only speak to the area supplied in Central St. Mary because Western gets some too. But Killancolly, Dean Pen, Old Road, my source, Old Road, your source, Old Road, Mosquito Hole, Fraser Wood, Hopewell and Tremolsworth. Recommendations have been made more, and Woodside, thank you. Recommendations have been made more than 10 years ago for the replacement of these distribution pipes, which are more than 60 years old. You can't get past to fix them now, Madam Speaker. The placement of a storage tank in Dean Pen and gravity feed all the mentioned areas was part of the recommendation. But the constant retort from the National Water Commission is that there are no funds. Madam Speaker, the citizens now demand that the National Works Agency put proper measure in place to provide a better water supply system for the residents in these communities. What is also significant, Madam Speaker, is that housing development in the constituency are being stymied because of the lack of water, because the local authorities will not give approval for housing development if there is no water. The constituency of Central St. Mary has always prided itself as being one of the foremost constituencies that spend a lot on education from CDF. It is to be noted, though, Madam Speaker, that prior to CDF in 2008, this constituency had always provided tertiary assistance bursaries to students who were going to colleges and universities, courtesy of funding provided by the MP prior to myself, currently, and from private sector interests and friends. The record will show that Central St. Mary spends a significant amount of CDF towards education, and last year has not been any different. A total of $6 million, the maximum we can spend on education, was allocated this year, providing more than 100 bursaries for tertiary students, and with the additional $3 million under the Jamaica 60 program, went a far way in giving additional assistance in terms of book vouchers. Madam Speaker, I have 3 high schools in the constituency, one a faith-based high school in Port Maria and 2 public high schools. St. Mary High School. No, man. 7 day. Port Maria. St. Mary High School in Highgate and Horace Clark High School in Islington. The St. Mary High School, Madam Speaker, right, Bobby, is a premier secondary institution in the eastern part of the island. And I dare say, competing with many schools, both rural and urban, to be in the top 10 schools in this country. Our sixth form program has always attracted more than 150, where's the minister? More than 150 students per grade. And that, Madam Speaker, is after intensive screening. With the sixth form alternative pathway program, our facilities are further limited by space constraints. And for the past 3 years, the school has been asking the Ministry of Education and Youth for additional space, and even a 2020 commitment to give 1 additional temporary classroom to be funded by the ministry has been aborted. This, Madam Speaker, is untenable. And I'm hereby calling on the Minister, thank you back here, Minister of Education, to assist in this respect and make good on his commitment for St. Mary High School. This, however, has not daunted the progress of the school, which has consistently outperformed the national average in CXE passes at both the CSEC and the CAPE levels. Madam Speaker, recently, the school also started another program in conjunction with the University of Delaware, wherein, thank you, my colleague, wherein 6 formers are doing an associate degree online along with their usual CAPE courses and will matriculate with qualifications which will significantly shorten their course at the bachelor's level with that institution, but will also provide credit for courses at other major universities, both locally and internationally, because of the accreditation program of these courses. There are 25 students in this first cohort doing their associate degree in liberal studies. The first year preparing them for branching into 3 main areas of study, including aviation studies. And Madam Speaker, to note that the university has given them subsidized fees. They have subsidized it heavily for our students. The Horace Clarke High School has been crying out for additional classrooms for the past 10 years. Initially, Madam Speaker, because of government's inability to fund them, the school resorted to building additional space with wooden structures built by the very technical students at the school, guided by the teacher, with funding coming from the Member of Parliament and the business community. Years ago, I invited them and the students sat in the gallery listening to the presentation and the commendation on the work that they have done. Those classrooms have become old and outdated, Madam Speaker, and promises by the Ministry of Education, Youth and Youth to get a new block has been futile. Despite this, however, the teachers continue to work to bring the quality of education to an acceptable level. We are, however, encouraged by the pronouncement of the Minister at the Standing Finance Committee that 2023-2024 budget year will be our year. Madam Speaker, last year I spoke to the CDF funding installing lights at the football field at Clements Park, Port Maria. This facility is still in need of some fencing and seating, and I've reached out to the Minister of Sports as well as the Minister of Local Government to provide assistance to rehabilitate the field. I'm happy to report, and I don't see the Minister of Tourism here, that the community centre field, that's the Stockholm Park Community Centre this year, is slated to receive a brand new hard surface court, courtesy of funding from the Pond the Corner program funded by the Tourism Ministry. Tourism is primarily St. Mary is primarily an agricultural parish, although a significant number of our people work in the tourism sector. For Central St. Mary, we are finally happy that the Padgy Beach is being given some attention, with the first in a new series of community consultation being held over the last weekend. For the past 6 years, I've been repeatedly asking of the Minister of Tourism in Standing Finance Committee, what about Padgy? What about Padgy? What about the long-awaited Padgy Beach plans? I'm finally seeing traction, yes, Padgy bus now, traction on this new and different concept from what was originally proposed. My only disappointment, Madam Speaker, is that it might take as long as 2 years to become a reality. On the subject of tourism, the community of Islington boasts the Tacky Falls, a scenic waterfall experience with cultural links to Chief Tacky, who history records as having hid in the cave behind the waterfall. The area needs some further development with major access along the roadside road in Islington, and I'm appealing to the Minister to assist with the development of this tourism site as well as the rehabilitation of the access road. Not too far away as a crow flies, but a significant distance by road is the Kwame Falls, you know that? Right. Which reporters from the Star newspaper discovered some weeks ago. Another area of potential development for the parish's tourism product. Madam Speaker, some 2 years ago, the TEF provided some funds to the Municipal Corporation for the rehabilitation of the Robbins Bay Road. I want to report that this project has stalled, and the road conditions have now deteriorated to being worse than they were prior to the commencement of this work. Over to you, Minister of Tourism. In July, Madam Speaker, the Highgate Market was completely gutted by fire. Fortunately, no lives were lost, but those vendors plying their trades in the market lost a lot of their merchandise and produce. As a consequence of this dislocation, the vendors have resorted to building their own shops in the burnt-out area and have returned to the streets to do vending. This has compounded the traffic congestion situation in Highgate, which has resulted in significant travel times through the very short section of the main road. I'm eagerly awaiting some news for a new market for the town, following on the Minister's tour and commitment to build a new structure. The significant number of our graduates from high school in St. Mary have to look elsewhere for employment. Yes, some after certification enter the tourism industry. Others find limited local employment, and others try their hand at farming. There's a need to have additional employment for graduates, and currently we are exploring the prospects of engaging a BPO operator to set up shop in Central St. Mary to capitalize on the vast number of qualified graduates suited for this industry, therein providing employment and development for the area, and also to prevent the usual rural-urban drift. However, before I close, Madam Speaker, there are some issues that I'd like to speak about which not only affects my constituency, but others as well and nationally. JPS. This utility provider, Madam Speaker, has lost the trust and confidence of the people of Central St. Mary. We have had to endure a great disservice over the past year, compounded by the fact that there are significant delays in the restoration of power. On multiple occasions, Madam Speaker, attending to restoration of power in some communities take 2 to 3 days, taking longer than the OUR stipulated time for restoration of service. Complaining to them is greeted by the response that they have reduced crews. Lines have become overgrown with plants, causing not only safety concern for the citizens, but repeated instances of low voltage which damage many small appliances in the homes of those communities. Many small shop operators have had their frozen meat, primarily chicken back, which is sold to the poorer class, perish due to these long delays in restoring power, adding further to the suffering that already exists. Power lines hang precariously, some almost toppling over, and no immediate attention given. Note, Madam Speaker, these areas are usually in the deep rural communities where there might not be as many customers as in the big towns, which they respond to quickly. All of this seemingly, Madam Speaker, by having less service crew in an effort to maximize profit from their operations. And Madam Speaker, the government is also culpable in this. The state owns 20% of JPS and shares in the profit of that company. So when the company decides to cut the cost of service crew to make more profit, then government has to step in to protect the citizens of this country. The current status quo is totally unacceptable and unconscionable, Madam Speaker. Most water systems in my constituency depend on JPS for power for their pumps. It is really heart-rending when you get a reason why some areas are without water. It's because JPS is only providing single-phase power to the pump station. Things happen, Madam Speaker. But JPS takes a long time to correct this. That communities who would get water for only one single day per week are shortchanged by their negligent attitude. Why can we not have an arrangement where JPS is mandated to attend to the NWC installation with some priority? Madam Speaker, I find it mind-boggling as well that in this technological age, that when there's a power outage in an area, people have to notify JPS or to go on their app to say that there is no power. Isn't there some remote application that can alert the entity to that outage?
Madam Speaker, I now ask that the standing orders be suspended to enable the member to complete his presentation. He has after 5 minutes, and I ask you to allow that. Thank you.
Members, the question for the House is that the member be given 5 minutes to complete his presentation. Those in favor? Those against?
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Thank you, members. Madam Speaker, isn't there a remote application that can alert the entity to such an outage? I ask of this, Madam Speaker, because many of the older folks in our communities suffer because they cannot navigate an app. They cannot afford the credit to stay on their cell phones for long enough to join the queue to await speaking to a customer service agent, and at the same time having to find huge sums to pay the JPS bill. Time comes for JPS to look into this. And whilst on service, Madam Speaker, the service of the banks in my constituency cannot be described as anything less than shoddy. The one bank in Highgate has overgrown its space and has its customers lined up on the sidewalk to await doing their transaction. This cannot be, Madam Speaker, when the very same banks make super profits of the very customers who they treat with this day. Port Morais is not much different. No. I'm talking about FEM side, I'm talking about FEMI side. Port Morais is not much different. It is just heartbreaking to see senior citizens sit in the bank awaiting service, having traveled from far away as one bank closed their branch in Highgate years ago, and these customers' accounts were transferred to Port Morais branch. They are the very same citizens who will or cannot do online banking. And trying to draw them into this is like taking the horse to the water and forcing the horse to drink. Banks need to be more sensitive and more creative and recognize that one size does not fit all. I won't even speak of the discourtesy meted out to me by the security guard who tried to interrogate me, a customer, as to the reason why I was attending a bank and denying me entry into the new building of one of the banks in Port Morais. Can you imagine, Madam Speaker, what other citizens have to endure at the hands of these Shylock entities? We demand better service from them, Madam Speaker. Last year, I spoke about the noises from the motorbikes, which still continue unabated. I, along with those I represent, are eagerly awaiting the utilization, Minister, of the new regulations under the Road Traffic Act to arrest this noise nuisance. Another concern I'd like to highlight here, Madam Speaker, is the destruction of the roads by the heavy loads carried from the sand mining operations in the parish. Although there is none such operation in the constituency, the trucks traversing the constituency going as far as Negril carrying aggregates. Not only the overweight, but the constant spilling of some of the load onto the roadway create hazards for other motorists. Many have suffered broken windscreens from flying missiles from these trucks, and a spillage can also contribute to skidding of vehicles on the loose stones in the roads. I'm calling on the NAA to reactivate the mobile waste stations on the corridor so that offending operators can be reined in. I'm proposing as well, Madam Speaker, that the government introduce a level of 10% of the cost per ton sold to these trucks to be paid as part of the maintenance of the roads in the constituencies. The nearest location to me sells about 150,000 tons per year. Cost of aggregate raised between 2,500 to 3,000 per ton, which would give about 45 million per year to assist in maintaining the roads. Madam Speaker, I won't speak to the issue of MP salaries that some of my colleagues have spoken about, which we all know to be totally inadequate. One aspect of the remuneration, though, is known as the subsistence, amounting to $800 per attendance. Years ago, in discussing with a colleague on this side, who happens to be deeply connected to the church, remarked many years ago when we were talking about this amount for rural MPs, and his response was, that can't even buy one night of the house of ill repute downtown. Now, Madam Speaker, that was years ago. Can you imagine what it would cost now?
Back road?
Not even back road. But he was referring to downtown, which was in his constituency then. This demonstrating that the package was and still is inadequate. Madam Speaker, in concluding, I want to assure my constituents that I remain committed to make a life better for you. And I'll continue to advocate for the 40,000 persons living in the constituency. And that together we can achieve much more. Let us come together to make the parish of our birth stronger, more peaceful, more prosperous, and a beautiful place where we would still want it to be the choice of place to live, to work, to raise families, to do business, and yes, to retire. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, another excellent presentation. And so we heard from the young politician looking at the future and the veteran politician showing maturity. And now, Madam Speaker, I ask you to invite the independent member sitting in the House to make his presentation, Mr. George Wright, MP for Westmoreland.
Thank Central for his presentation.
Westmoreland Central.
Madam Speaker, permit me to speak from a seat that is not my own.
Permission is granted.
Madam Speaker, I'm most grateful for the opportunity given to me today to address this noble House and the wider population for the second time in presenting the State of the Constituency Debate 2022. It is with sincere gratitude to the Almighty God that I am indebted for the gift of life, fueling strength, commitment, and enthusiasm to execute my duties. Many of our realities have been fibered with trials, tests, and storms, not just the recent tropical storm Ian. Amidst it all, we must give thanks. Notwithstanding the challenges, the opportunities we have translated to much success, for which I am truly humbled and grateful. Madam Speaker, the writer H.E. Lukács famously said, "No one can whistle a symphony. It takes a whole orchestra to play it." Individually, I cannot take credit for the tremendous work that has been done in the past years across the constituency of Westmoreland Central. It is with pride, Madam Speaker, that I speak to the team comprised of the hard-working councillors, Mr. Rudolph Yuta, Frome Division, Miss Donette Foster, Cornwall Mountain Division, and Mr. Lee Simpson, South Division. The councillor caretakers, Mr. Juna Clark, Petersfield Division, and Miss Carleen Vickers, South North Division. My staff at the constituency office, the team members of the Constituency Development Fund, Mr. Dwayne Salmon and Miss Danetta McLaughlin, my executive and management team, the Westmoreland Chamber of Commerce, the Rotary Club of Savlamar, my families, my friends, and my colleagues, the various churches and leadership groups, my proud people of Westmoreland Central. Collectively, they all have demonstrated on a daily basis to their unwavering support and steadfastness in building and the full potential of Westmoreland Central as a place to live, do business, and raise families. Madam Speaker, I am currently in my second year as a duly elected representative of the people of Westmoreland Central. Graciously, I reported that after more than 30 years of neglect, the citizens in my constituency can now boast of having good and consistent representation. Madam Speaker, personally speaking, this is no pageantry, neither is it a grand display. I have committed myself to the greater call of service, whereby I can harness the full potential of my constituency and restore dignity and hope to the people of Westmoreland Central. Madam Speaker, During my last debate, I spoke on a number of issues, including road rehabilitation, socio-economic condition, healthcare facilities, and the eyesore crime and violence that plagues the people of Westmoreland Central. Madam Speaker, today I would like to update the Honourable House on the progress made thus far. Madam Speaker, I cannot emphasize enough that I am committed to the people of Westmoreland Central, who has entrusted me to represent them. The parish of Westmoreland has borne several stalwarts of ministers in housing, agriculture, water and rural development, tourism, a prime minister, and the list goes on. It would have been good if my predecessors have left a strong foundation from which I could have continued the roadworks. The level of neglect and mismanagement is astounding and alarming. To date, the deplorable road condition I have inherited is a dismal reality, which I am working diligently to address. Madam Speaker, I have been a member of Parliament for a mere 2 years. In this year alone, over $700 million have been allocated for major road rehabilitation and upgrades. Madam Speaker, I would like to highlight just a few of the road areas which have been neglected for decades and for the very first time have been getting attention. Fort William to Welcome Road is 98% complete. Shrewsbury Logwood will be getting a bridge at a cost of an investment cost of $31 million. In addition, over $45 million were injected into road rehabilitation and upgrades. And upgrades have been successfully completed, with another $41 million allocated to complete the entire roadway in the community. Madam Speaker, that is caring, that is prosperity, that is the highest level of representation. Walter Chedi Singh, Landilo, Phase 1 entrance, Gully Banks, otherwise called Barks Road, Redgate, Hatfield Housing Scheme Road, Porter's Mountain, Friendship, and Dunbar's River to Torrington have all had a section of their roadways rehabilitated. Repairs were done to a section of the roadway from Maxfield to Barneyside. Important to note, Madam Speaker, more work will be done in a matter of days. We strategically place a large sum of money on the road from Goodens River to Tollgate. This road carries a heavy flow of traffic on a daily basis as it ties several rural communities to the parish capital. Madam Speaker, over $300 million be strategically spent on rehabilitating the roadways from Withorn to Darliston. This action will quench much of the unrest seen in recent times. Madam Speaker, for the very first time, so many new drains have been constructed on the road from Goodens River to Tollgate, reducing the perpetuated flooding and plague that plagues the community of Georges Plain and 3 Miles River. Madam Speaker, I am asking this caring government to place much emphasis on new drains, especially in the town of Savlamar and surrounding communities. Flooding has been plaguing these communities for years. Many more new drains are needed
if we are to see sustainable development of our communities, road and infrastructures. Madam Speaker, this infrastructural push represents the highest single investment in the constituency for the past 3 decades. The people of this constituency are reaping the benefit of this current government and its mandate. Successes and impact are evident and measurable. Madam Speaker, I wholeheartedly thank the Prime Minister, the Most Honorable Andrew Michael Holness, and the Minister from Southwest St. Catherine, Minister without portfolio in the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, for the road improvement project undertaken in the aforementioned communities. Pledges were made to the constituents and they were delivered upon. Madam Speaker, it is with a heavy heart that I must pause here to state and make an impassioned cry to the trucking operation companies and private operators. The overloading of trucks has been adversely affecting the road structure and dwarfing the upgrades. Madam Speaker, it is not a wise fiscal investment on either end of the short to long-term spectrum. We fix it today only to wreck it tomorrow. I ask this government to consider canvassing by a sea and a logistic hub plan for spanning from Kingston to Savlamar in this attempt to reduce the overweight unit on our main thoroughfare. In the interim, let us appeal to this freight industry to cease and desist the practice of overloading. They need to conform to a standardization in operation so they can make a profit, and the people of the constituency can also profit from this investment in their infrastructural development of roadways. Madam Speaker, the constituency of Westmoreland Central is also suffering significantly from the deterioration of rotten pipes rooted in the system for decades. This obsolete mechanism has heightened the practice of the National Water Commission, NWC, whose contractors continue to dig up the roadway in their bid to fix or lay water pipes. Many outcomes are evident in them leaving tremendous damages to the road infrastructure. Madam Speaker, I'm making a desperate plea for something to be done to end this practice. Millions of dollars are being spent to provide proper, much-needed road rehabilitation for the residents, only to have them destroyed in few months later by the NWC. Where this is a practice, I believe the Water Commission should be held responsibly. They must be held accountable and repair any damages done to the road. Madam Speaker, in my last State of the Constituency debate, I stood here advocating for the Savlamar market to be rehabilitated. Madam Speaker, my plea was not ignored. The Honorable Desmond Mackenzie, Minister of Local Government, has favorably responded and has journeyed to the constituency on a number of occasions to assess the state of the market. I am elated to report that those visits has borne fruits, as he subsequently pledged $50 million for the improvement that will allow for a safer and more sanitary facility for everyone. Thank you, Minister Mackenzie. An upgrade and modernized marketplace is well overdue. The people and I are looking forward to its completion. Madam Speaker, I ask for indulgence because my next statement might sound a bit redundant. When I was growing up, there was a value compass that presented education as a sail for positive upward mobility and success. However, with the injection of the COVID-19 pandemic that entered our shore in March 2020, the educational system had been riding on some storms, which has predisposed our nation's youth to unstable ground. We have seen the psychosocial displacement of students and teachers and its ranging effect that has stunned the growth of teaching and learning programs, especially for rural youths. Thanks be to God that notwithstanding the challenges, there has been tremendous rehybridization of innovation with online classes and remote learning techniques. In spite of the innumerable challenges being faced, our nation educators displayed true Jamaican fiber of resilience. They were able to adapt, pivot, and innovate with a great concentration on understanding how important communication and technology is. With online experience and remote learning in the 20th century education landscape, it is against this backdrop that for the past years I have placed special attention on education and skill training. Madam Speaker, since taking office, I have spent over $18 million to support education in my constituency. I have assisted more than 1,000 residents in Westmoreland Central with books, bags, sanitary supplies, school fees, and lunch money. Crucial to the development of the Westmoreland Central constituency was that much of this financial support went to underserved and at-risk youth in volatile communities whose potential and prospect were being stifled by social exclusion and inadequate representation. We recognize the imperativeness of social inclusiveness in bridging the gap that existed in the quality of educational service with an optimization of focus with policy-driven intervention. We can enable human service-driven result in social and economic growth through active community involvement, presence, and representation. I have observed a noticeable increase in appeal for assistance and application for back-to-school grants since the resumption of face-to-face classes. Madam Speaker, I am pleased to inform this House that this year alone, a hefty sum of $8,500 was disbursed from my constituency development funds to benefit over 200 students, helping them to offset their university and college tuition fees. Madam Speaker, commendation to the Minister of Finance, Dr. the Honorable Nigel Clark, for the additional $3 million that went to book vouchers and electronic device for children and youth, especially in some rural and volatile communities. The Ministry of Science, Energy and Technology, led by the able Minister, the Honorable Darrell Vaz, and CEO of the Universal Service Fund, Mr. Daniel Dawes, were gracious in stepping in to provide free Wi-Fi. hotspot at 3 locations in the constituency of Westmoreland Central: Withorn, Cook Street, and Hendon Circle, with the promise to set up other Wi-Fi sites in Poppy Street of George's Plain and Shrewsbury Logwood that will no doubt be beneficial to the residents. Madam Speaker, this year celebrates 20 years since the inception of the PART program. It is the government flagship social protection program. The program serves over 130,000 families and over 400,000 individuals. The intention when the program was implemented was to provide financial support to the most vulnerable members of our society. The program, Madam Speaker, was designed for the needy and not for the greedy. There has been calls in recent times for a broadening of the social support net, as well as call for an increase in the benefit. I would like to add from my observation that there needs to be a strengthening in the due diligence process that takes place to select the beneficiaries. We have seen in many instances where those who are in real need are not positioned to be served. The program needs stakeholders such as elected representatives, justice of the peace, and pastors to be involved to assist to the program by recommending those from our communities who are desperately in need and should be beneficiary of this noble PART program. Madam Speaker, many Jamaicans have been investing more in their retirement or golden age through various schemes and programs. Education and the information age have been influencing traction in this regard. Much to be said to the Ministry of Labour and Social Security in their quest to help average Jamaicans to secure their well-being and future care. Commendably, the PART program is upgrading and reaching more disenfranchised seniors. However, Madam Speaker, I ask of the Honourable Minister from the Ministry of Labour and Social Security, the Honourable Carl Samuda, to consider an amendment to the social pension age specification of assisting for 75 years and older. Madam Speaker, we hope that 65 years could suffice for more attraction to the lower socio-economic growth to tap in this benefit. Madam Speaker, in my maiden presentation, I've made a statement: there is dignity in owning your own home and land, dignity in living in communities without zinc fence. Madam Speaker, dignity has been restored to Westmoreland Central. Thanks be to this current government for restoring hope in the people. I've been on a drive to restore dignity by removing zinc fence and embarking on beautification projects in the communities such as Rickett Street, Seaton Crescent, and Newmarket Oval, to include Cook Street. The social housing program Hope has seen 8 houses being approved for construction, one of which already started and is 98% complete, and another 7 to be started in a matter of weeks. Madam Speaker, I'm of the view that it is time for the government to consider a rent-to-own initiative for especially civil servants. where the NHT build houses and allow residents to rent with the ability to own at a later date. Buying a house can be difficult for some, and so they rent. The rent-to-own initiative can build equity and provide the opportunity for the renter to pay towards owning the home over time. This is also the possibility of intergenerational mortgage, where more families in the constituency can have the dignity and worth of owning their own home. Madam Speaker, the present government, led by the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, is demonstrating care, and the people of Westmoreland Central recognize and appreciate what is being done for them. Madam Speaker, I continue to lobby for a dialysis unit and renal specialist at the Savlamar Public General Hospital. Madam Speaker, I am making this call after consultation with doctors at the hospital. I continue to lobby on behalf of the overworked doctors and nurses, as well as the frustrated residents, for the sophisticated intensive care unit that will upgrade the care of patients. Savlamar is the only government-owned hospital in the parish, and so I would love to see the hospital upgrade from a Type B to a Type A facility, as patients from Hanover and even St. Elizabeth are transferred and treated there. Additional wards are needed that will at least increase inpatient capacity. A number of elderly patients have to travel outside the parish, more so to Cornwall Regional Hospital in St. James, to have such service rendered to them. Madam Speaker, the patients are having challenging time because traveling expense and fees for care is a heavy burden. Madam Speaker, Savlamar Public General Hospital sees the most trauma in Jamaica, not just in the parish, but in the country. Trauma caused by motor vehicle, bike accident, and criminal casualties. In the case almost every day, yet still there is not a radiologist or a neurosurgeon on call. Further to that, patients have to be transported to the other location because the hospital does not have a CT scan machine. Immediate urgent care cannot be rendered in these life-threatening situations. Madam Speaker, we also need to look at the physical therapy for patients. Oftentimes, the medical care given to patients are optimal and surgeries performed are successful, but the patients are not properly rehabilitated as there are only 3 physical therapists, but the needs is greater than they provided to secure or optimize more holistic outcome. Madam Speaker, Jamaica's agricultural industry represents the richest opportunity for local and international market. With our island's unique tropical climate and diversified topography and production of crops that keep us relevant, there are many reasons to suggest that farming sectors is an integral agent in our country's development. The Westmoreland Central continues to drive economic development. Madam Speaker, we are very much committed to inspiring and fueling resilience and growth with the diverse crop and produce, as well as the increased numbers of registered farmers. As such, I'm asking the government to place some attention and putting aside emergency funds for rural areas farmers, rural areas, farm communities in need of road rehabilitation. For a quick relief for both motorists and pedestrians, mall has been the solution at times. Although not localized, rainfall is not a scarce commodity in central Westmoreland, but some areas, farm becomes maroon and siege too often. Madam Speaker, notwithstanding the aforementioned challenges, farmers continue to reap success. The constituency now have a data bank of over 4,200 registered farmers. They were that we
Madam Speaker, I now ask that the standing orders be suspended to enable the member to complete his presentation in 5 minutes. Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, colleagues. Madam Speaker, it is no secret that the western parish of the country has been plagued with lottery scamming and gun violence. Madam Speaker, I fear for the lives of our citizens, but I fear more so for the lives of our children and youth, because crime seems to be on the rise, especially with these vulnerable groups. Madam Speaker, the criminal mastermind in the shadow are targeting and grooming the youth accordingly. Key individuals and I in the constituency have met and have drafted a plan. Unfortunately, time will not permit me to give details, but this plan will see the parish reinventing and reintroducing sports in the communities and school. This is a developmental plan, sport plan, where from an early age, sport will be used as a developmental tool to help to realign the focal point and thoughts of our children and young people. Madam Speaker, if you will allow me, I would like to make an impassioned plea to the Minister of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sports, the Honorable Minister Babsy Grange. Minister Grange, collaboration is needed on this matter for the longevity and success of these plans. It's been more than 5 years now that the parish is without an in-sport officer, and I am imploring you to act with urgency, especially now as we try to steer the youth away from a life of crime. Madam Speaker, I want all Jamaicans to know that crime and violence are everybody's business. Losing one is losing too many. Madam Speaker, I want to acknowledge the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of National Security, Dr. the Honorable Horace Chang, and the National Housing Trust for its partnership in building more police stations. Madam Speaker, as recent as September 15, 2022, ground was broken in my constituency, Frome to be exact, for the construction of a new state-of-the-art police station with plans to build a divisional headquarters in Farm Pen in very short order. Madam Speaker, this is a strategic investment in crime fighting, and I thank the Minister himself. Madam Speaker, the zones of special operation is still in effect in part of Savlamar. Residents are grateful for the positive effect it is having in their communities. Crime has seemingly moved from these areas, and we see flare up in other peaceful areas. I am appealing to the police youth groups, community policing organizations, neighborhood watch groups, and the re-establishment of the Peace Management Initiative to be activated in the affected communities. Madam Speaker, when I was elected by the people of Westmoreland Central to be their representative in the House of Parliament on the 3rd of September 2020, I challenged myself not to only give exemplary service to the nation, but to also learn as much as I possibly could about the parish in which I was born. Madam Speaker, my parish has a rich history. I have discovered that Westmoreland was once the richest parish in the island, according to the book Taki Revolt, the story of an Atlantic slave war written by Vincent Brown and originally published in 2020. Madam Speaker, Westmoreland being adjoined to what is known as the parish of Hanover was acre for acre, one of the most profitable territories, not only in Jamaica but throughout the British Empire. In 1723, Westmoreland became the parish we know it to be geographically, and in 1730, Sablama was officially made the capital. Madam Speaker, the parish is 300 years old. To mark this momentous occasion, Madam Speaker, I would like the good Minister of Culture, Sports and Entertainment to help us to celebrate and restore the pride of the people. Madam Speaker, I would appreciate a monument to be erected at the Hendon Circle to celebrate our 300 years anniversary and the restoration of the iron cast water fountain beside the parish courthouse that was gifted by Mr. Earl Sadler in 1887. Madam Speaker, I want to take this forum as an opportunity to appeal to persons residing in the constituency and indeed across the parish. The Prime Minister, the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, has recently indicated that the government is considering implementing a gun amnesty. Madam Speaker, I'm imploring those current engaged in the use, sale, transportation, or stockpiling of illegal firearms and ammunition to avail themselves of that opportunity when it arises. Madam Speaker, there will be no place for violent producers and persons who engage in this sort of activities in our vision for a new Westmoreland. A parish where everyone will feel free to live, work, raise families, and do business. Madam Speaker, hope is everybody's. Hope is very important part to play today. Hope is a very important part to today's society. It is the very lifeline of our existence. Jamaica is a great place, and indeed Westmoreland Central is a great place. Madam Speaker, the job of the people is not a 9 to 5. It is not a weekend off the job. Neither is it a 40 hours work week. Madam Speaker, it is a 24 hours, 7 days of the week, 365 days of the year job. Madam Speaker, I have an open door policy. I approach every day, every task, and everyone I meet with enthusiasm and purpose, as my mission is to restore the hope in them and to help them to harness their full potential. As we set our sight on the future, I close by saying, we choose hope over fear. We see the future not as something out of our control, but as something we can shape for the better through concerted and collected efforts. We reject fatalism and cynicism when it comes to human affairs. We choose to work for the world as it should be, as our children deserve it to be. A quote from Barack Obama in 2014. Madam Speaker, I thank you and this honorable House.
Madam Speaker, I really wish to thank Mr. George Wright, Member of Parliament for Central Westmoreland, for his presentation, and to say he's an independent voice in the Parliament, and we appreciate his presentation here today, Madam Speaker, and I'll ask colleagues here to applaud him one more time. Madam Speaker, I now ask for the recommittal of items from statements by ministers through. Oh, the close. I'm sorry, Madam Speaker, we actually should be closing the debate now. Yes. And so I ask you to invite the Member of Parliament from Western Westmoreland, Mr. Morland Wilson, to close the State of Constituency debate. Thank you.
Members, I want to thank the member from Westmoreland Central for his very fulsome and good report to the Parliament this afternoon. I now ask the member from Westmoreland, Central? No. Westmoreland Western, to close the debate, constituency debate for us.
Let's pull it over. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, may I ask that I speak from a seat that is not my
Permission
own?
is granted. Go ahead.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, it is with distinct pleasure that I close the debate of the State of the Constituency debate 2022-23 in this Honourable House. Madam Speaker, and what a debate it has been. To God be the glory. Let me thank the Most Honourable Prime Minister Andrew Holness, the Honourable Deputy Prime Minister Dr. Horace Chang, for gifting me with this monumental opportunity to open and close this debate. I also want to say special thanks to the people in my constituency of Westmoreland Western, who, without your unwavering support, my involvement in this August debate would not have been possible. I want to express special thanks to all my colleague parliamentarians who shared their achievements and aspirations, as well as their challenges across their constituencies. I think we can all agree that the presentations by the backbenchers, year on year, are getting stronger and stronger, and better, and richer. We were treated with the superb artistry by our parliamentarians, stimulating, illustrating, inspiring and informative, explaining and demonstrating their work, hope and ambitions. Madam Speaker, over the past 6 weeks, 33 members of Parliament stood in this Honourable House and gave an account of their stewardship of their respective constituencies. 27 government members and 6 opposition members made their contribution. It can therefore be said that both houses were afforded the opportunity to hear their views on a variety of issues. Madam Speaker, we are thankful and blessed as a nation to have a government that is exceptionally successful in not only navigating the onslaught of COVID-19, but also the dramatic rise of inflation and the crippling effects of the global economic impact caused by the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine. Madam Speaker, while some countries faltered, some stumbled, and others defaulted, Jamaica is recovering stronger together. Madam Speaker, it is important that we recall and highlight some of the critical issues that were raised by our representative parliamentarian colleagues. Madam Speaker, I will outline several critical developments coming out of this very comprehensive constituency debate presentation. The constituency debate commenced on September 14, 2022. There were 12 sitting days of debates. 33 scheduled speakers have made presentations, 27 government members and 6 opposition members. This Honourable House gave equal opportunity for representatives from both sides of the House to share their views on subject matters that has been impacting residents in their respective constituencies, whether negatively or positively. Some took the opportunity to talk about their own personal issues and issues of their interests. Madam Speaker, the constituency debate was very thought-provoking and invigorating. And may I say that the objectives aptly represent the presentations from this side. And they were fully aligned with the imperatives of the government's mantra of a caring government with an economy that is on a path of rapid recovery. Madam Speaker, over the period, several themes emerged: roads, water, constituency development fund, security, social partnership and unity, education, development of infrastructure. Madam Speaker, all areas were effectively covered. Roads. Madam Speaker, since my opening of the State of the Constituency debate in early September, there has been significant improvement in the performance of National Works Agency within my constituency of Westmoreland Western. Road repairs have started along the toll gate to Grangehill to Glasgow roadways. Madam Speaker, the contract has been awarded for the repair of the Bullstud Road, and we anticipate work will begin soon. Madam Speaker, the intensity in which roads are being repaired across the country, the member from Manchester Central, Rhoda Moy Crawford, revealed that under her Road Affix program, some 30 roads have been repaired under her stewardship, which included Corridor Blue Mountain, Banana Ground, Coffee Grove, Devonton and Mayday, in addition to the Williamsfield leg of the East-West South Coast Highway, which is 81% completed. While the member from Westmoreland Eastern and my fellow Westmorelite reported that some $730 million in total road repairs have been done in his constituency. He pointed out to rehabilitation work for Chesterfield to Seaford Town at a cost of $115 million. Whitton to Highgate, $320 million. Highgrade to Darliston, $147 million. And $75 million on the retreat to Marchmount Road, with an additional $20 million being spent on the retaining wall for the same road. Madam Speaker, Hanover Western Member of Parliament and my neighbor, Tamika Davis, has reported that 1 kilometer of roadway from Middlesex to McLaren Gate was rehabilitated at a cost of $15.3 million. 800 meters of roadway from Dyers to Davis Court at a cost of $15.3 million. Another 750 meters of roadway from Bachelor's Hall to St. Sion along the Lance River to Horton Court Main Road in Lucy Division at a cost of $13.6 million. While she reported progress in rehabilitation of several roadways, many of which has been in disrepair for almost a generation. Madam Speaker, the member from St. Thomas Eastern, Dr. Michelle Charles, gave an update of the $20.7 billion South Coast Highway Improvement Project, which is now in its third year, spanning 3 parishes, which is currently boosting employment in their respective parishes, and when completed will significantly boost development and aesthetic of the parishes. Madam Speaker, this is a caring government. No other point in Jamaica's history have we seen so many road repairs, rehabilitation, improvement by any government. Madam Speaker, kudos to this government, which is ably led by Prime Minister Andrew Holness. During the opening of the debates, I made mention of the carnage on our streets of Westmoreland because of traffic accidents. Of the 487 people killed on our roadway last year, the most since 1985, Westmoreland as a parish accounts for 45 fatalities of that number. Madam Speaker, as we await the commencement of the training program with FIA Foundation for motorcyclists, a proposal was made for consideration to be given to instituting mandatory refreshers courses in motor vehicle operation every 3 to 5 years. Madam Speaker, while we were sitting in this Honourable House last evening, a reckless public transport operator traversing a section of the corporate area was busy increasing the carnage on our roads. To add insult to injury, the operator, it was reported, had over 120 unpaid traffic tickets. Madam Speaker, I want to use this opportunity to propose that this Honourable House introduces legislation that will serve as a deterrent for persons who use our roads recklessly at the expense of the life of others. Madam Speaker, I go further by proposing that the existing Road Traffic Act be amended to include not only greater fines but confinement for road traffic violation that endanger the life of the public. Madam Speaker, the member from St. Thomas Eastern, Dr. Michelle Charles, during her presentation called for compulsory ongoing education for habitual bad drivers, especially those who put lives of other road users at risk. Madam Speaker, we are a government that cares about the lives of road users, and we will not stand by and allow the carnage on our roads to become an uncontrollable monster. Madam Speaker, the precious commodity of water is treasured by all Jamaicans. I was happy to report to this Honourable House that my hometown Blackness was fully connected, and the commissioning of the non-Pearl Retirement Orange Hill Water Project, an investment of $475 million, serving 9,000 residents in 9 communities and districts. Madam Speaker, Westmoreland Western is not alone. The female members in this chamber were not shy about laying pipes, as their predecessors, who were all male, failed in their efforts. Madam Speaker, in Trelawney Northern, member Tova Hamilton laid some 8.1 kilometer pipes from Barron Hill to Samuel Prospect at a cost of $275 million. 2.4 kilometer transmission line from Dornach to Barron, 4 kilometers from Wakefield Square to Donnay Cross at a cost of $69 million. 2.5 kilo pipeline from Unity to Donnay Cross at a cost of $20 million. Madam Speaker, St. Anne Northwestern member Crystal Lee is also busy laying pipes, which her male predecessor failed to do. Minyard Water System, $400 million. Queenet Water System, $450 million. Ticket Water System Project, $150 million. Madam Speaker, over $1 billion in water investment. Madam Speaker, St. Andrew West Rural member Juliet Cuthbert-Flint asks for patience as she continues to run the race in meeting the needs of the people of Lawrence Tavern from Burnt Shop to Border as the $800 million Essex Hall water project is being constructed, while in Manchester Central, $410 million water supply project system is expected to relieve decades-long water woes for many residents. Madam Speaker, in St. Catherine Northeastern, Member of Parliament Carencia Morrison has called for the National Water Commission to revise its 1985 regulation that ties water bill to property owners rather than the customer. A motion I am sure the member will be tabling in this Honourable House in the near future. Madam Speaker, the Constituency Development Fund. In debating the effectiveness of the Constituency Development Fund, Manchester Northwestern member Michael Phillips has described it as a travesty, while Manchester Central MP Rhoda Moore Crawford clearly states the funds allocated were not enough to meet the needs of constituents. The cause grew louder as the debate continued. St. Andrew West Rural MP Juliet Cuthbert-Flint, St. Mary's Southeastern MP Dr. Norman Dunn, Manchester Southern MP Robert Chin, and Portland Eastern MP Anne-Marie Vaz, during their contributions, lobbied for the revision exercise to be carried out, as Portland MP, Eastern MP, gave a clear case for the CDF to be increased to $54 million for each member of Parliament, and a task force set up to review the allocation every 5 years. Madam Speaker, adding his voice to the debate, St. Mary Western MP, Robert Montague, not only called for the Constituency Development Fund to be increased to a similar 60 million, but for it to be pegged as a percentage of the national budget, going further, the public naming of MPs who do not fully utilize their allocations. Madam Speaker, our Minister of Finance, after listening to the consistent calls, deliberations, and debate from a number of MPs on both sides of the House, acknowledged the argument that the size of the CDF has not kept pace with inflation. Consequently, the Honourable Minister, Dr. Nigel Clark, says that the Ministry is to consider seriously the calls from the Members of Parliament to increase the CDF funding. Madam Speaker, this is clear and irrefutable evidence that our Minister of Finance not only attentively listens to the proceedings of the debate, but also internalizes and contemplates the argument presented to support students that are pursuing tertiary education, the sick, the poor and vulnerable, and those seeking assistance to improve their lives. Madam Speaker, I turn to security, social partnership, and unity. Enough is enough were the words uttered by St. James Southern Member of Parliament, Homer Davis, when he declared that he is prepared to do everything within the law and within his powers to help the security forces to weed out the criminals from St. James Southern. Madam Speaker, this statement resonates with many in this House, as the result of families being robbed of breadwinners is that members of Parliament is called upon not only to support the burial, but also support the schooling of their children, care packages, and support. Madam Speaker, the Kingston Central MP, Donovan Williams, in his presentation, lamented how crime and violence continue to plague his constituency. The MP asked for priority attention to be given to Rose Garden, more popularly known as Spoilers, and if possible, the extension of ZOSO in that community. Madam Speaker, the efforts of the government in fighting crime must be noted. The construction of police station in Westmoreland Western, Westmoreland Central, St. James Southern, St. Elizabeth Northwestern, in addition to the groundbreaking Firearms Prohibition, Restriction and Regulation Act 2022, which was passed in both houses in September, combined with the gun amnesty that was passed in the lower house yesterday. These pieces of legislation will go a far way in curbing gun crime and restoring peace, security, and unity in our communities. Madam Speaker, the challenges around garbage collection was shared by Portland Eastern MP Anne-Marie Vaz and South Catherine Eastern MP Denise Daly, who both conveyed their daily struggles with consistent and bitter complaints from constituents. Madam Speaker, this is a caring government. And for a caring government, you find caring actions. So, Madam Speaker, it was no surprise when Local Government and Rural Development Minister, Honourable Desmond McKenzie, shared that some 50 garbage trucks are en route to Jamaica. And our Prime Minister, the Most Honourable Andrew Holness, announced in this Honourable House just yesterday that each Member of Parliament will be allocated $5 million in December 2022 to support the removal of bulk waste, garbage, and debris across their respective constituencies. Madam Speaker, the government continues to acknowledge and prioritize education as we seek to get our students ready for future jobs. Indeed, the member from Clarendon North Central, MP Robert Morgan, shared his story today in this Honourable House, a story which is similar to many in here, how education and hard work, albeit from humble beginnings, allows him to rise to the post of Minister of State. Madam Speaker, St. Catherine East Central member Alonda Terlam advocates for Portmore Community College to become a technological hub centered around youth innovation, focusing on high-tech skills, training, and innovation. St. Thomas Eastern MP Michelle Charles shared her concern with the ugly tsunami of violence occurring in our schools, and as a mother, she recommends that the Ministry of Education and Youth consider mandatory conflict resolution courses beginning at the primary level. Madam Speaker, in the constituency of Westmoreland Western, with the support of the Jamaica Social Investment Fund, we are now constructing an 8-classroom block at the Grange Hill Primary School under the Caribbean Development Bank's Basic Need Trust Fund Cycle 9. While in Portland Eastern, the MP reported that on July 9th of this year, the building housing Portland Art Gallery and a homework center, the Port Antonio Marching Band, and other businesses was burned to the ground. Madam Speaker, housing. Housing, Madam Speaker. St. Catherine Northeastern MP, Carencia Morris, share her struggles with the fight, which is the fight of many in this honorable house, of poor housing infrastructure in her constituency, especially during the hurricane season. St. Catherine Southeastern MP Robert Miller, while reflecting on his reality, openly called for a partnership with the Ministry of Housing to develop housing projects through the social housing program. Madam Speaker, while in St. Elizabeth, Northwestern, the Honorable William J.C. Hutchinson, CD, in seeking to improve the lives of his constituents, asked for priority to be placed on the request for 20 acres of Holland lands that was transferred to the National Land Agency to the Ministry of Housing for the Middlesex squatter settlement to be developed and sold to 54 families who are living in very deplorable conditions. Madam Speaker, St. Andrew Eastern MP Favour Williams, the Honourable, reported that the common requests across the inner city communities are the need for housing or the help with building materials so persons can improve their living conditions. Through her CDF, at least 100 persons benefit annually with housing grants. Madam Speaker, as our population grows, there is an equivalent growth in the demand for suitable accommodations. This demand must be met with foresight, urban and city planning. However, the member from St. Andrew East Rural recently pointed out that upon close examination of her constituency, everywhere that is unsafe to live, comrades live there. Everywhere that is not safe to live, comrades live there. The member from St. Thomas Eastern agrees, as she suggested that the opposition is guilty of settling people on gully banks, in riverbeds, and on landfill and dumps. Madam Speaker, I too reflect on the hypothesis. As I examine my constituency of Westmoreland Western, which was under opposition control for over 30 years. Looking at all the informal and risky settlement, it quickly became evident that persons were not only allowed to settle any and anywhere, but they were encouraged to construct board houses in the event of a change in political views. They need to put their house on a truck and move. Madam Speaker, this is not how I want my people to live. As leaders, we must lead with conscience. Madam Speaker, St. Andrew Eastern MP, Honourable Favour Williams, shared and often overlooked socio-economic reality that there are those men and women who, no matter how hard they work, will not be able to attain proper housing. Many of them were born in a time when access to high school education was reserved for a few, and so education beyond primary school was not in their future. She went further to state that they too deserve proper housing, even as they make investment in their children and grandchildren's education, so that the children, their children and grandchildren can have a better way of life. Madam Speaker, good point. Madam Speaker, the government understands this unique challenge of our people. For this reason, each member of parliament on both sides of the House were given 5 hope houses, totaling 315 homes from the Office of the Prime Minister to distribute to those in need. There is more, Madam Speaker. The Office of the Prime Minister in Phase 2 is allocating an additional 25 social housing to be issued to each constituency. That is 5 each year. And let me say that again, Madam Speaker. Our Prime Minister has made provision to use government lands to construct 25 social housing for each member of parliament, totaling some 1,575 homes, family and livelihoods, which is a major achievement. Madam Speaker, this is not only a caring government, but it is also one that is working and looking out for the best interests of our people. Madam Speaker, the government understands the unique challenges across the country and is serious about addressing the legacy of informality, as it has not only a target, but is also on track of delivering 70,000 housing solutions to the market. In fact, our Prime Minister recently announced that by the end of the year, the government will be delivering over 9,000 housing solutions. Madam Speaker, in closing, and as I close, commendation must be given to what without a doubt, a government that cares, a government that focuses on economic stability, a government that focuses on problem solving and correcting the legacy of underdevelopment. Madam Speaker, as I draw the curtains on the state of the constituency debate 2022-2023, I must express my heartfelt gratitude to this honourable House for affording me, a backbencher, a first-time MP, and a Westmoreland, the opportunity to open and close the debates. Let's not allow ourselves to be distracted by detractors, but let's continue our efforts to build a Jamaica that is a place of choice to work, live, raise family, and do business. Thank you. God bless this House. God bless the people of Jamaica. God bless Jamaica land we love. Thank you. Madam Speaker, I now ask for the motion for the State of the Constituency debate to be closed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I would say we need to applaud everyone who participated and to thank the Member of Parliament for Westmoreland, Mr. Marlon Wilson, for opening and closing the debate. Excellent, a job well done. Madam Speaker, I now ask that items be recommitted on the agenda from items statements by ministers through to presentation of bills without leave of the House, first obtained.
The question before the House is that the items that were suspended be now recommitted, beginning with the item statements by ministers. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it. Statements by ministers. Announcements.
Laid on the table of the House today are the following: annual report for the Postal Corporation of Jamaica Limited for the year 2021-2022, and the report of the Public Administration and Appropriations Committee on its deliberations on the fiscal policy paper interim report for the financial year ended March 31, 2023.
Bills brought from the Senate, petitions, papers, reports from committees, notices of motions given, reports from committees, I'm sorry.
Madam Speaker, I beg to lay on the table of the House of Representatives a copy of the report of the Public Administration and Appropriations Committee on its deliberations on the Government of Jamaica fiscal policy paper for financial year 2022-23 interim report.
Notices of motions given orally.
Madam Speaker.
Member, and go ahead. Go ahead.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move the following motion. Be it resolved that the report of the Public Administration Appropriations Committee on its deliberations on the Government of Jamaica Fiscal Policy Paper for financial year 2022-23 interim report, which was laid on the table of the House on the 2nd day of November 2022, be approved. Madam Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to make this motion.
Minister of Finance. Notices of motions given orally. We are at notices of motions given orally. Questions and answers to questions. Motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice. Motions relating to sittings of the House. Motions for leave to introduce bills. Presentation of bills without leave of the House first obtained. Public business.
Madam Speaker, this Honourable House would have taken note that on the first day of November 2022, Ministry Paper number 91/2022 and resolution entitled Government Guarantee of Loan in the amount of $1,401,100,000 from the First Caribbean International Bank, Jamaica Limited, to the National Water Commission were laid on the table of the House of Representatives. Madam Speaker, I now seek the leave of the House to withdraw the resolution.
Members of the House, is it the wish of the House that the resolution be withdrawn? Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, I now ask for the recommittal of the items announcements and notices of motion given orally for the revised resolution bearing the title Government Guarantee of Loan in the amount of $1,401,100,000 from the First Caribbean International Bank, Jamaica Limited, to the National Water Commission, dated November 2, 2022, to be tabled and taken.
Announcements.
Also laid on the table of the House today are copies of the government guarantee of loan in the amount of $1,401,100,000 for the First Caribbean International Bank, Jamaica Limited, to the National Water Commission. And this is a revised resolution, as well as a list of government guaranteed loans as at September 30, 2022.
Members, the question before the House is that we now have the recommittal of the item notices of motions given orally. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Member?
Madam Speaker, the Public Debt Management Act, the Public Debt Management Payment Guarantee National Water Commission Approval Resolution 2022. Whereas Section 17(1)(a) of the Public Debt Management Act, hereinafter referred to as the Act, provides that the Minister may, with the prior approval of the House of Representatives, guarantee the payment of the whole part or part of the principal monies and interest and the payment of any other amounts payable under or upon any loan raised by the public body. And whereas the Minister hereby seeks the approval of the House of Representatives for the issue of a government guarantee in respect of a loan in the amount of $1,401,100,000 from CIBC First Caribbean International Bank Jamaica Limited to the National Water Commission, and any cost outstanding interest, late interest and fees as may be due and payable. And whereas Section 17(3)(b) of the Act requires the proposal for the guarantee to be brought to the House of Representatives accompanied by a statement setting out A, the details of a risk assessment exercise undertaken with respect to the issue of the guarantee and a determination as to the level of the risk involved, and B, the total amount of all principal monies then remaining unpaid in respect of all other loans previously so guaranteed, which proposal and statement are attached hereto. And whereas, pursuant to Section 17(3)(c) of the Act, the Financial Secretary has certified that the guarantee is consistent with the fiscal targets for the total debt specified in Section 48(c)(1)(b) of the Financial Administration and Audit Act. Now, therefore, be it resolved by this Honourable House as follows. 1. The resolution may be cited as a Public Debt Management Payment Guarantee National Water Commission Approval Resolution 2022, which was laid on the table of the House of Representatives on November 2nd, 2022, and 2, the aforementioned guarantees hereby approved. Madam Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take this motion.
Public business.
Madam Speaker, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motion, notice of which I gave earlier.
Question before the House is that there is suspension of the standing orders to allow the member to take the motion, notice of which he gave earlier. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As required by Section 48(e)(3) of the Financial Administration and Audit Act, that an update on the performance of the economy be provided within 6 months of the passage of the Appropriation Act of the financial year. The Fiscal Policy Paper Interim Report was tabled in Parliament on September 27, 2022, and referred to the PAAC for review. In terms of structure of the report, the FAA Act requires that the interim FPP includes the economic outturn of the previous financial year, the performance of the first quarter of the financial year, projections to the end of the current financial year, and projections for the succeeding financial year and the medium term. On October 26, 2022, the PAAC met with the Chief Executive Officer of the PIOJ, the Governor of the Bank of Jamaica, the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service to review the Fiscal Policy Paper Interim Report. In line with the IFPP, the PIOJ reported that the financial year 2021-2022, the economy grew by 8.2%, recovering strongly from the negative 11.2% contraction in 2020-2021. The growth was driven by strong recovery in hotels and restaurants and in agriculture, forestry, and fisheries. However, inflation picked up during financial year 2021-22, coming in at 11.9%, well above the Bank of Jamaica 4.6% range. During the first quarter of fiscal year 2022-23, economic growth continued, but at a more moderate pace, with GDP growth at 4.8% for the quarter. The service sector grew by 6.9%, driven by hotels and restaurants, other services, and the wholesale and retail trade. But the goods producing sector declined by -2%, reflecting a large -62.5% contraction in mining and quarrying due to the continuing effects of the fire at Jamaica. Construction also declined by 5.2% during the quarter. For the full fiscal year 2022-23, growth is projected at 4.1%, reflecting the normalization of economic activity. This gradual deceleration is a rate of expansion is forecasted to continue through fiscal years 2024-25, averaging within a range of 1% to 2% over the medium term. The Financial Secretary noted that central government's operations for fiscal year 21-22 generated a fiscal surplus of 0.9% of GDP, exceeding the target of 0.3% of GDP, while the primary surplus of 6.8% was higher than the 6.3% program for fiscal year 21-22. For the period April to June 2022, central government operations overperformed relative to budget, reflecting continued economic recovery for the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Revenues and grants of 236.1 billion was ahead of budget by $21.7 billion, or 10.1%. This positive performance was driven mainly by tax revenue, which was $18.7 billion better than target. Expenditure, net of amortization, for its part, totaled $236.4 billion for the period, 0.6% less than program, and comprised recurrent expenditure of $220 billion and capital expenditure of $16.4 billion. Given the overperformance of revenue and grants and the noted under expenditure, the operations of the central government over the period April to July 2022 generated a fiscal deficit of $0.3 billion. This was 98.7% better than the program deficit of $23.3 billion. The primary surplus amounted to $44.7 billion, which was $23.7 billion better than targeted. Given the revised assumptions for 2022-23, GDP growth of 4.1%, inflation of 6.8%, average oil price of $102.6 US, core imports increased by 14.8% relative to 2021-22. The FS informed the committee that the Ministry of Finance and Public Service is now projecting revenue and grant for fiscal year 2022-23 of $780.457 billion, 29.5% of GDP, representing an increase of $30.677 billion, or 3.9% over the approved budget. Tax revenue totaling $702.213 billion is projected to account entirely for the increase, as the targets for the other main categories are unchanged. Total expenditure, net amortization, for fiscal year 2022-23 has been revised to $773.737 billion, 29.2% of GDP, reflecting an increase of $30.792 billion, or 4% relative to the approved budget. This will be allocated entirely to recurrent spending as follows. Programs to rise by $15 billion, or 5.7%. Compensation of employees by $5 billion, or 5.7%. And interest payments by $10.792 billion, or 7.2%. capital expenditure will be maintained at 65.067 billion. The Bank of Jamaica updated the PAAC on several areas of its mandate. The point-to-point inflation rate for calendar year 2021 was 7.3%. For fiscal year 21-22, the inflation rate was 11.9%. For the first half of 2022-23, inflation appears to have peaked at 11.8% in April 2022 and has been on a downward trend since dipping to 9.3% in September 2022. The BOJ anticipates that absence of any new shocks, inflation will generally stabilize over the remainder of 2022, ranging between 9 and 10%, and return to the bank's target range by December 2023 quarter. The counter-rising inflation rates of BOJ has raised its policy rates by some 600 basis points since September 2021, from 0.5% to 6.5% currently. Raising interest rates are supposed to contain inflation by reducing demand pressure from making it more expensive to borrow and more rewarding to save. But the evidence so far is that while increasing BOJ policy rates have pushed up money market and interbank rates, like overnight rates and treasury bill rates, they have little or no effect on commercial lending and saving rates, which stood at 11.24% and 0.45% respectively, and at the end of August 2022, almost the same levels as they were before the BOJ began increasing its rates. The BOJ reported that Jamaica's foreign reserves were robust and are more than sufficient to support the economy. At end of September 2022, net international reserves stood at 3.8 billion and gross foreign assets amounted to 4.3 billion, representing 24.2 weeks of goods and services. The BOJ reported that it had begun rolling out JAMDEX in June 2022, and to date, over 100,000 persons and entities had subscribed to it, including one major commercial bank, NCB. The BOJ further reported that JN Bank and a major payment service provider are expected to come on board before the end of 2022. The BOJ admitted, however, that there were certain technical challenges that were being experienced that would extend the full rollout of the currency until December 2023. What were the technical problems? Well, comments and questions that were asked of the BOJ. What were the technical problems inhibiting the full rollout of JAMDEX? The BOJ informed the committee that while it would be relatively easy for individuals and small businesses to use JAMDEX, larger businesses that have point-of-sale machines or retail systems tied back to their inventory would require some reconfiguration of their software to become fully functional with JAMDEX. How to improve portability within financial system. The committee noted that because of strict Know Your Customer requirements, that persons have state-authorized IDs and provide 3 to 4 references, as well as verification regarding their source of funds. It was often very time-consuming and bothersome to persons to open or transfer an account within the banking system. The BOJ informed the committee that under the 2019 amendment of the Proceeds of Crime Act, account holders and persons wishing to open bank accounts were now classified in 3 categories: high risk, medium risk, and low risk. The BOJ advised the committee that it was considering recommending to DTIs that they relax the requirement for multiple reference for low-risk customers, and that it was also considering establishing a central registry to store bank reference information of account holders, so that if they wish to open a new account at other banks, those references would be transferred to the other bank. The chronic deficits of some self-financing public bodies. The chronic deficits run by some SFPBs were also of concern to the PAAC. The situation with the JUTC was of particular concern because it was noted that in the mornings there were hundreds of commuters in Portmore and other parts of the city waiting on buses for up to 2 hours to get to work, and this was a direct threat to productivity. Some members felt that the problems affecting some of the SFPBs were operational, while others thought they were policy-related. All members of the committee felt, however, that whether the issues were operational or policy-related, decisions needed to be made pretty urgently to place these SFPBs on a more sustainable footing. Recommendation: the PIOJ and Statin should seek a more finely disaggregated and collect data about STEM professionals in the workforce to enable easier monitoring of the skill levels and evolution of the workforce. To reduce fare theft at the JUTC, managers and bus inspectors should ensure that cashless systems on buses are in good working condition. The BOJ should put in place a timely program of public education about the central bank digital currency, highlighting the use and benefits of the currency. May it please you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, if anyone would like to participate in the debate, if not, we can proceed to close. Madam Speaker, we conclude the debate on the motion and ask that it be approved.
Members, the question before the House is that the motion, notice of which the member gave notice earlier, be now approved. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it. Motion is approved, member.
Madam Speaker, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motion, notice of which I gave earlier.
The question before the House members is that there is a suspension of the standing orders to allow the member to take the motion, notice of which he gave earlier. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it. Member?
Yeah. Madam Speaker, the National Water Commission is seeking to refinance a proportion of the bond value, approximately 1.889979 billion, outstanding to the National Commercial Bank. NWC intends to borrow 1.401 billion from First Caribbean International Bank Limited, with the remaining debt to be paid from NWC's revenue. Madam Speaker, the background is that the Cabinet, by decision 2612 of July 16, 2012, gave approval for a government guarantee for the loan of Jamaican dollar equivalent of 21 million US, which was 1.889 billion, from the National Commercial Bank and NCB Capital Markets to finance, to the NWC to finance existing loan facilities. The proceeds of the loan were utilized to fund the K-factor related activities and supplier payments. Madam Speaker, the existing loan facility matured on October 5th, 2022, so it was a guaranteed facility, guaranteed from 2012, matured on October 5th, and NWC invited financial institutions to tender proposals for the refinancing of the loan. 4 proposals were received by NWC and by the Ministry of Finance and Public Service, and CIBC First Caribbean's proposal was deemed as the most competitive. On September 8th, the ministry granted approval for NWC to access the financing from First Caribbean, which is willing to provide NWC with a new facility in the amount of $1.4 billion, which comprises the remaining balance of $1.389979 billion plus the transaction cost of $11.2 million, Madam Speaker. So it's a guarantee that's replacing a previous guarantee, but for a lower amount. So whereas before we had a guarantee for approximately $1.9 billion, the guarantee this time is for approximately $4 billion, because NWC Resources paid off $500 million of the difference. So I hope that will be sufficient, Madam Speaker, for the. I don't know if anyone else wants to participate.
Minister, I didn't hear the tenor of what were the terms. I heard the amount, but I didn't hear the terms.
So this is a loan, 15 years, and 60 quarterly principal payments commencing. So sorry, that would be 5 years. 5 years. It says 15 on my sheet, but 60 months is clearly 5 years. No, I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that. The tenure is 15 years, and it will be paid off in 60 quarterly payments. Okay? Does that answer your question? Yeah. 15 years. So, Madam Speaker, I would ask that the motion be put to the House.
Members, the question before the House is that the motion, notice of which the member gave earlier, be now approved. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it. Minister, your motion has been approved.
Madam Speaker, it is not contemplated for us to do any further business today. I therefore ask that the House be adjourned until Tuesday, November 8, 2022.
Members, the question before the House is that we do adjourn until next Tuesday, the 8th of November at 2 p.m. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it. This House is now adjourned.